Welcome to our program this morning. Bobby Wood is here with us. Welcome, Bobby. Great to see you. It's been a long time. Glad to have you on the show. Rosanna and Anita, good, very good morning. We got a lot to talk about this morning. Protests continue to sweep the country on Gaza. So that's going to be looked into in depth. The Chinese president was here this week rather, in the Bay Area meeting with Mr. Biden and other leaders from the Asian Pacific region. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a growing movement for disability rights, focusing on getting disabled people elected, which is a very important thing because the disabled represent actually the largest minority, oppressed minority in the country. So let's get started. Last Wednesday, there were protests around the country. Actually, protests are taking place every day. But on Wednesday, they took the protests to the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington. And the police escalated their presence dramatically, got into a tussle, provoked a tussle from what I've read with the protesters. 90 people were hurt. It made national news. The protesters were engaging in nonviolent civil disobedience. They said that they've been calling and petitioning and writing and doing everything that they could in order to reach the legislators, but they weren't getting any reply, silence. And so they decided to take it to the headquarters and say, come on out and talk with us. We want a ceasefire. This killing has to end. And the response that they got, at least from the cops, was a billy club and a kick. Same kind of protest took place in Chicago. 1,000 protesters descended on the Israeli consulate in downtown Chicago. And our Bobby Wood was one of them. Bobby, I heard you were in jail all day. You expected it to be an in and out experience. Didn't quite happen that way, did it? You made bail. Tell us a little bit about it. Why were you there, and who were you with?
Oh, good morning, Joe. People go to jail in groups to make a point to collectively resist an intolerable injustice. And that's what the massacre of Palestinian people is. And that's why hundreds of Jews shut down the Israeli consulate last Monday. The protest was organized by Jewish Voices for Peace, Not in My Name, and If Not Now. And I think I was there because, it's being justified as necessary to protect Jewish people, this assault on their genocide against Palestinians. And I think all of us felt an urgency to have our voices heard. Um, so I like a lot of other people. I suffered when the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians came to light, and shared the agony of the families and the babies dying. But before I could even process that, there was this brutal attack on the Palestinians that multiplied 10 times the human suffering. And, the Jewish tradition that I was raised in, the core was justice and an idea that the purpose of our life is to make the world better for everybody, and that the experience of the Jewish people would make us understand and have solidarity with people suffering everywhere. So it was doubly painful to have this genocide being done in our name. Joe, I just wanted to mention, I didn't organize this, I just participated. And of the more than 100 people who were arrested, I don't think three of them were over the age of 40. I'm so proud of the young Jewish activists who organized this and their focus on ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. I'll show you the shirts we got. Um, Not in our name.
Not in our name. You say
Yeah.
ceasefire now. Beautiful.
Um, So
So it was a
um,
predominantly young audience.
was totally young. And they focused on the idea never again includes Palestinians. Um, so I got a chance while I don't like to focus. Okay, we're in jail, big deal. So we're there 9 hours. A lot of people suffering a lot more than that, but it did give you a glimpse of the inhumanity and disrespect of our carceral system, that what other people go through. We were wonderful to be there in a group, to have each other, to sing together and, you know, hug each other and whatnot. But you got to see what other people who are isolated have to endure. Um, I was moved by the young people because I learned a lot. When you're there, they take away your phone and your shoelaces, your hairpins, and your watch, and anything that you could, pens and pencils. So you actually talk to each other. And I learned the path that so many of them came to this in. And it was so interesting, a different path than me as a young Jewish person came to be part of a movement. So many of them had been activated during the 2020 protests of the murder of George Floyd, and took a look at the different situations. And it was interesting to me that that was that protest against racial injustice, and a lot of them came from what we might have called middle class, in the old days, middle class families. But these young people identify as working class, and they have jobs like educators and, you know, IP, I mean, IT, that, you would think of as working class, and many are involved in the labor movement. Um, but many came from families where they had gone to Jewish schools and Jewish camps and visited Israel many times. And the sudden realization that the treatment of Palestinians was completely counter to everything that we thought of as our Jewish tradition of justice was so, startling, that I think that this is what moved many people to participate very strongly in this movement.
Well, each generation comes to struggle in their own particular way. That's an old adage in our movement, and it's true now. Um, it's very interesting that the movement for a ceasefire is growing. I mean, it's growing. The NAACP recently came out in favor of a ceasefire. That's an important organization in kind of the middle of the road political center, very strongly democratic, both with a big D and a small d. Rosanna, the LA Times, your hometown press, ceasefire now. And Bobby, it's growing in the labor movement. Over 1,600 individuals have signed a letter now, initiated by UE and then a local out in Washington State, calling for a ceasefire. The support in the labor movement and in the working class will be key to pushing things forward, don't you think?
I agree, and I think important role of these Jewish demonstrations is to dispel the myth that being anti-Israeli policy is anti-Semitic, because the labor movement has always had a strong stand against anti-Semitism. And I think we need to give the space to show that being for justice in the Middle East is not anti-Semitic, and that's what we're not going to let that be defined that way.
Do you know that?
Actually, go ahead.
Go on. Go on.
Um, actually, this attack on the Palestinian people is not making making things safer for Jewish people either in Israel or around the world. It's creating a dangerous situation, and we think we're standing up for Jewish people everywhere.
Do you know that there was a student at George Washington University that was suspended for putting up a sign saying divest from Zionist Israel? So there's this idea that if you are opposed to the policy of Israel that you're inherently anti-Semitic is being enforced by expulsions and suspensions at Columbia, at Harvard, at a number of the uh, uh, Ivy League schools. Anita, they're vigorously suppressing any form of dissent. The Palestinian Youth Student Organizations shut down, the Jewish Voice for Peace shut down, but it's not working because they're the young generation so creative. They just create a new organization with a new name in its place, and you can't stop it. But it's a big uh, civil libertarian freedom of speech issue, Anita, don't you think?
Ex- Exactly. And I know DeSantis in Florida has banned all of the the Palestinian liberation student organizations in Florida, but the ACLU is suing him to overturn that. Youth are really motivated by this struggle, and they definitely are not going to stop. I know there's disputes all over campuses. Yesterday in Ohio, we had some comrades in Northwest Ohio, in Toledo area. They went to Marcy Kaptur's office, their representative, and these are young people who had knocked on thousands of doors last summer to make sure she defeated her MAGA Republican opponent in that election. Now she's their representative. She wouldn't even talk to them. She wouldn't listen to them. She just called the police immediately. So they are really disillusioned. It's something that is affecting youth all over the world. I think we're seeing this movement. They're not going to stop. I know that faculty members, the AAUP, for example, has come out and said specifically criticisms of Israel, the state of Israel, is not equivalent to anti-Semitism, and I think it dilutes, our look at our understanding of real anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic acts, which are on the rise. But we can't just lump them in with all pro-Palestinian demonstrations. So definitely a conflict that has reverberated throughout the world, and even touching Ohio and everywhere.
Bobby, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. We salute your example. We hope that other comrades around the country take heed and follow that example because we have to keep the pressure on, and if the politicians aren't listening, then we're going to get arrested. We're going to do all means possible to ensure, and if we have to shut it down, we'll shut it down. I mean, that's lives are being lost and children are being killed, and we have to do everything that we possibly can to put an end to it. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will be
Ceasefire
with
now.
ceasefire now. We will be with you in court when you have to go, so you don't have to do. And the other folks who were there any extra time. Take care and have a great. And we'll see you at the PW banquet on Sunday. There's a big PW banquet in Chicago, and it looks like it's going to be a tremendous event. We'll look forward to hearing about it next week on Good Morning Revolution. Have a great day. Let's continue
Thanks,
the
Bob.
conversation. Not only is people being silenced in the United States, they're also being silenced in Israel. We had a peace conference last week, and one of the legislators, Comrade Ada Tuma, her last name escapes me at the moment. You'll forgive me, Ada. Yes, was suspended from the Knesset for speaking out against the murder of Palestinian children, calling for a ceasefire. Let's hear her remarks about her expulsion, suspension from the Knesset.
I left the Knesset 2 hours ago, and I won't be for 2 months able to express my feelings, my opinions in the plenary or in the committees, because the ethics committee in the Knesset decided to prevent me. In the only democracy in the Middle East, a parliamentarian who is representing almost 20% of the citizens of Israel is not allowed to speak out. And why is that? Because I raised questions about the war, because I am against, first of all, the war and hurting civilians from both sides. If you remember well, 2 weeks ago, when I protested and spoke about the children from two sides of the borders, here in Israel and in Gaza, I was told in that same parliament that there is no equality, there is no symmetry between the children, and the children of Gaza brought it on themselves. So it looks like this ethics committee decided that either I speak exactly what they want me to speak, either I will be silenced. The voice, anti-war voice, is going to be silenced now for 2 months. I promise you. My values, my opinions will be heard. Nobody can silence me, and I will keep and continue to struggle for peace and ending immediate.
Thank you, Ada Tuma Suleiman, and we stand in solidarity with you in your fight for freedom of speech, for your fight for the Palestinian, Arab, and Jewish people of Israel who are fighting the occupation and fighting the war. She gave a wonderful Rosanna presentation at our conference, really added something to it and helped spark a very lively and intense discussion at the conference, don't you think, Rosanna?
Yeah, I do. I do think it was really important for us to hear from comrades who are there in the trenches so that we were able to get more guidance as to what the position should be and what is the actual situation that's happening and how best that we can help. So I think it was an important part that, it's I felt it was so nice. It was great that our party has these fraternal ties that we can call on each other when needed to help the struggle to, this have a global connection and be able to help each other in moments like this. So it was I was very thankful that the comrades made themselves available for that because the comrade from Akel was. The Palestinian Party was on there on Sunday as well. Spoke to us on Sunday.
Scott, you were at the conference and heard both speakers, Ada and Akel, from the Palestinian People's Party. Akel was speaking from the West Bank. What impressed you about his presentation and in particular and in general about the conference?
Well, regarding Comrade Akel's presentation in particular, I was first of all really impressed just by um, the courage, the resistance, the insistence on the struggle for liberation. I was impressed, as I always am, in dealing with our fraternal comrades in countries where, U.S. Imperialism has played such a damaging role, to see how clearly they uh, understand the class nature of the question, right? That what is happening um, in Palestine, the support of the U.S. government, the complicity of the U.S. government in the massacre of Palestinians does not reflect the values or the desires of the American people, and also, of course, just the urgency of the demand for a ceasefire. Um, uh, that this is something that is necessary right now. Uh, that it's something that we can win. That we're getting closer and closer to winning. But uh, it's not something that we can slack off in the fight for. And that was the thrust of the whole peace conference, I think, finding ways that we can move immediately and win this urgently necessary ceasefire and tell the U.S. government and especially the U.S. weapons industry that this is not the voice of the American people.
What impressed me about the conference was its youth. I mean, it was about, it was a majority young people. And we had some old heads there, which was good. We don't discriminate. In fact, we're for unity between the younger generation and the older generation. But the youth fact and the people of color, it was almost close to half people of color, which was a very wonderful surprise. And we had about 200 people. There were about 110, 115 in the house and another 80, 90 online. And there was a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy and also a lot of music. The cultural presentations were an integral part of the program, beginning with the PW Forum on Friday night through Sunday afternoon. And it was a big concert Saturday night, which I missed. So I had to have my evening sleep. But anyway, I heard it was a wonderful, wonderful program. But Anita, now the main thing is to follow up on the decisions of the conference and to increase the pressure on the Biden administration and on Congress to demand a ceasefire and to demand a ceasefire now. Do you think that they're listening? You say
Uh,
your representative is not, Cantor, but
well,
others?
Marcy Kaptur may not. I mean, I think it has to have an effect on her. Oh dear, no, I'm not frozen. I thought I was frozen for a minute there. I think they will have to listen, and if we keep at it, they have to listen. And we're trying to influence Sherrod Brown right now. I think people will be well advised to have a look at the toolkit that was released at the peace conference. That's excellent set of instructions and information about who is influenceable in this fight and what exactly to demand of our elected officials. And I think we have to do that right now. Some people are talking about, well, who are we going to vote for next November? Well, that's a year away. We can't wait for that. We have to take action right now. So I think contacting and demanding action from our elected officials and to keep up the protests, those are the immediate steps we have to take. And I hope, I know there were 6 people from Ohio at the peace conference, and I really look forward to having an all Ohio meeting where we can really take that, what they bring back to, specific statewide action. So I'm looking forward to that.
There are 3 or 4 bills that are before the Congress now that were put together by our Political Action Commission in the form of a toolkit, which we have sent out to our clubs and districts and posted online, beginning with the call for a ceasefire that was advanced by Cori Bush and a number of other members of the squad. I think it now has 21 or 22 co-sponsors in the Congress. Then there is another bill calling for transferring money from the U.S. Defense Department and military to human needs that was advanced by Barbara Lee. A third bill that puts together the main propositions of the Poor People's Campaign and the call for a third Reconstruction. That is to say, to put together a general people's program and platform, Rosanna, to really put the country in a new direction, a new trajectory that would advance civil and human rights. And we want all of the clubs and districts to focus on that now as we go into the holiday season and next year.
Yeah, we actually at my club meeting last night we talked about the different bills and which ones would be much more applicable to our where we live, here in the Los Angeles area. The Poor People's Campaign is a coalition of many groups fighting for equal rights and but have united to end poverty, and that's really key when we talk about cutting the Pentagon funds and just cutting the military budget and just all of these things. So um, it really is focusing the fact that we people are starving here in the United States, and we are funneling money to countries where they're killing innocent people. So we have to be able to change that narrative and change that understanding that we need to refocus ourselves here in the United States and meet the needs of working people here first.
Part of refocusing means continuing to build the coalition to fight the extreme right on the ground from the bottom up and and motivating and energizing new forces in that coalition. And one of those uh, components of the People's Front are the disabled. Disabled people is we make up the largest minority in the country and one of the most neglected. And we were very happy to hear that a new organization is being formed called Disability Victory, Scott, and uh, there are a lot of movements that are nonpartisan and focus on the involvement of different constituencies. Um, but this one is explicitly progressive, and that's because the issues that are confronting the disabled are issues like healthcare, you know, are issues like access to housing, and so on and so forth. And so they're recruiting and training candidates to run for elected office, not only at the local level, but at the state and national level too. That's a very encouraging development, isn't it?
Absolutely. One of the central pieces of our party's kind of theory, our understanding of the world, is that struggling for the rights of oppressed people, struggling for full equality for especially oppressed groups, which includes people with disabilities, um, actually is to the benefit of the entire working class in our struggle for liberation. And I think this is especially clear in the case of the struggle for disability justice. So the things that um, disability activists are fighting for, like Medicare, like workplace accommodations, um, like better, more accommodating public transit, those things benefit everybody, right? And this is part of a very broad struggle about um, people have all kinds of minds and bodies. Our minds and bodies work in different ways. That's a question of our identity, right? But fighting for a society where one identity is not valued above another, one kind of body, one kind of mind is not valued above another, is of fundamental importance. And it's a really encouraging sign that the disability justice movement is gaining gaining steam.
You know, when we talk about building united fronts, Anita, uh, sometimes our members have the idea that it's a united front of the left, that we should get on the internet and look for every left group and we have common ideas and let's unite with. No, No, we're not talking about, that's a very narrow and small group of people. We're talking about, going to the union, going to the community group, going to the church, to the synagogue in the neighborhood, to the temple, to the mosque, to the PTA, to the environmental groups, to the women's LGBT, and on the basis of the issues, and trying to uh, work with them around the manifold questions that are before the broad public. And that has to include the disabled organizations who are often overlooked. Uh, so I hope that in the work of the party in Columbus and the others, that we will make that point to them, because this is a community that, far as I know, we don't work with too much.
Absolutely, Joe. I think this is just like Scott said, this is a way, again, that the ruling class wants to divide the working class. The working class is a broad part of our population. We have to unite that and activate that broad coalition of people in order to effect change. And it is good to see this disability rights organization really focusing on electoral politics. It reminds me of the great activism that was highlighted in that wonderful documentary called Crip Camp a couple of years ago, about the activism that went behind that took people to the Americans for Disabilities Act in 1972, 73, that era. It was really sustained political action over the long term, and really embracing, building a broad coalition for support of that kind of legislation that really increased accessibility for disabled people. And like Scott said, the naturally, as a nationally oppressed group, the disability community is the natural ally of the whole working class. And really, we really need to recognize that and stand by it. And I think the disability community is a very diverse community and may have lots of different elements, and maybe it's difficult to all work to work. It will take some thought behind really trying to mobilize and help that community mobilize itself to gain in political power.
We have a natural ally with a inherently uh, progressive agenda, an agenda which is shaped by the solutions to the problems that we face can only be public solutions. Rosanna, you can't solve them any other way. You take issues of public transportation, which is a big issue in LA. I know y'all can't go anywhere unless you're in a car. But that's a big problem for the disabled in LA, because the public transportation which is related to issues on the environment and so on and so forth. And so uh, we cannot win this election uh, coming up without making conscious efforts to include everybody, and that has to be the bottom line.
That's very
Let's
true.
move.
I mean, people here in Los Angeles, uh, there's a service, like a taxi service, but especially for people with disabilities, physical disabilities, that you can call. But it's very inadequate. You have to wait an hour or two before they pick you up from your appointments. You have to call 24 hours in advance. So if you have, if you have to go to urgent care, you got to find your own ride. People get upset if the bus has to, there are some buses that have lifts, but people get upset because they have to wait that much longer. It's just an array of things that really we need to educate the public about how everyone has a right uh, to access everything and be accepted equally.
Absolutely. Let's move the agenda. Um, this week, another big issue in the news was the visit of President Xi from the People's Republic of China to the United States. He was in your state again, Rosanna, in the Bay Area. There you see him meeting with Mr. Biden, President Biden. And I'm just wondering if, if it was all what concrete results came from the exchange between the U.S. and Chinese delegations. Pandas, they're going to send pandas back to the zoo in, in D.C. That's a good thing, no, Rosanna?
Well, pandas are cute. They are cute. Um, but I'm hoping that in the next few days, we can hear more about what really took place and if there is some serious outcomes. I think the importance, the important element is to be able to have peace and a diplomatic dialogue with the two countries instead of this threat of war. And I read some bunch of propaganda that made like accusations of China and things like that, as though we here in the United States are don't have our own baggage. It made it seem like it's all China's fault, sort of, so to speak. And I mean, what are we doing right now? We're supporting a country that is uh, killing people, innocent children, allowing these kinds of murders. So I don't think that, I think we have to look at things very clearly and be honest with ourselves about what's happening, and really demand that peace that we all, everyone in the world wants, so that we can move forward in our struggles and in being able to end poverty everywhere and have a livable wage and housing and all of those things that are really much more important to us.
Scott, is there a thaw in Biden's Cold War 2.0? Do you think this
Well,
meeting
it's
represents a turning point, or is it just all superficial surface diplomatic niceties and that they're just going to continue doing the same old thing?
I think what we can say is that every second that Joe Biden spends talking with the president of China instead of talking to other people about China and spreading accusations and imperialist propaganda about China is a good thing. So it's a good thing that this meeting happened. It's a good thing that the U.S. military and the Chinese military will be back in communication with one another. That's a step forward or a step back from the brink, let's say. And we know that the U.S. ruling class and the weapons industry in particular have been pushing us toward that brink. Whether it's a turning point is going to depend on the movement, on the movement for peace, on the movement for demilitarization, on the movement for a foreign policy that reflects the way that working class people behave, right? When the, I don't know, the idea that um, the United States has the right to go everywhere and do whatever it wants and make conditions on the ability of other nations to do so. That's I don't that seems to me totally divorced, like from the way that working class people approach the world. So it's on us to make sure this is a turning point in U.S. foreign policy. Uh, but it was a good thing, and I like pandas.
We like pandas too. Well, let's hope so. But we got to once again keep the pressure on. Let's hear our mailbag question. Will there be a candidate on the 2024 ballot? If not, why not? At least it would give us people something to think about. Uh,
Hmm.
Anita,
Yes,
ready
I
to
would love to.
run?
I would love to respond to this question. I think people have enough to think about. I don't think we need things to think about. I don't think, I think voting should be a strategic collective act, and it's not a symbolic gesture to show how pure you are in your thinking. I think a CPUSA candidate would just be a symbolic a choice because it's what the voting for a CPUSA candidate wouldn't have any positive impact on the outcome of the election. It wouldn't be part of a collective movement. So I think CPU USA should run candidates, but should run them at the level where they're appropriate. And we have some folks in Ohio who may be running in nonpartisan elections in 2024. And I support that kind of an effort rather than the expense and symbolic baggage of a presidential candidate.
But symbolism isn't all bad, is it now? I mean, you good to put your name out there and offer alternatives to Scott, to Rosanna, to the politics and solutions that the Dems and Republicans are putting forward. Who wants to
We
Absolutely.
take
can't,
a shot?
we can't, I don't think we can afford to put us out there for symbolism, not in the position that we're in right now, not in the struggle that we're waging. I think that's not not making a full analysis of the situation we're in and what is necessary. The other thing is that, campaigns are very expensive and time consuming. We're not in any position for such a campaign. Um, and 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 I don't think that we can have the kind of impact we want to have if we do that. And I think that's the most important part is what type of impact does the steps that we take, what kind of impact is it going to have is really important for us to always keep in mind. It's not about just, showing up and even, you know, as a symbol or something to think about. We're not in that position right now. We're in a very serious position and we have to take it serious. This is not a moment to just, wave our flags. It's a moment that really requires us to think deeply, to look at things deeply, and to make choices that maybe we're not we you know we may not want to, but they're necessary. They're necessary because there's so many people lives that are at stake if we don't do the right thing.
We are in favor, though, of running candidates at the local level, school board, city council, building capacity from below. Electoral campaigns, tactics kind of depend on what your situation is at any given moment and your capacity to carry out the decisions that you make. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you can run an election campaign and uh, focus all your effort on it. We've had a lot of experience with that. And you exhaust yourself, you exhaust your organization, and then you collapse for the next 6 months. So it all depends on timing, place, and circumstance. Well, that does it for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see everybody not next week, but the week after. Next week is Thanksgiving, and we won't have a show next Friday, but we'll be back the following Friday with another edition of Good Morning Revolution. Have a good week. Have a good holiday. Stay strong. Stay safe. Stay in the fight. Take care, everybody.
Later, comrades.
Bye.
Everybody.